Hello, Ruslan. You can hear us and see us. And maybe we
Hello,
can
Mark.
well,
Nice to see you.
I can see you as well and hear you. Beautiful. I'm going to start with a few slides to set the scene for the topic we're discussing. Can I have the slides on screen? So my name is Mark Ossel. Here you see the title of the session. If you're so I'm board member of the IIIb Alliance, Open Smart Grid Protocol. I'll give you an explanation in a second. Member of the European Commission Coordination Group, Smart Electricity Grids, Senior Vice President of NES Corporation, and other committees. The session you could read in the beautiful documentation is about this, changing the role of the smart grid, but I would say more changing the role of the participants in the smart grid or the grid of the future. As said, we've got Peter Doven, General Director, CEO from SEPS, DSO. We have Olaf Meet, he's not online, but maybe Peter Simcoe, founder and CEO of Powerix Energy, and Ruslan, he's online from the Ministry of Energy in Kiev. As said, I'm representing NES, American Corporation, Smart Metering, Smart Grid. Most of our projects we've done in Europe, like in Italy, Volume, Tauron in Poland, and so on. And the IIIb Alliance is a non-profit organization, a user group promoting the protocol about 60 utilities are using across Europe. Enough promotion. Over the past years, in many events and seminars, the topics were along the energy transition and the clean energy package, and the terms losses, outages, consumer empowerment, all that you've heard it many times. But now, of course, due to the war and the energy crisis coming along, things have gone even faster than expected. The change, the fundamental shift, for 100 years, a bit more, world was sort of easy and no big changes in the electricity world. Generation, transmission, and then, at the end of the day, a consumer with a few bulbs. Of course, nowadays, breaking up the utilities in generation, distribution, and retail, and alongside technology, the electric vehicles, the solar panels, the wind farms, they now taking off at higher speed than ever expected. And that will even get worse. Electrical cars are expected to drop significantly in price over the next few years. And by 2030, they might be 30–40% cheaper because the technology is then so common and so much affordable. But of course, the grid wasn't built for that new world. The grid was built for that old world. And if you take the traditional model, as you see it here, sort of updated with some solar panels, a bit of wind, a bit of storage, it looks like a decent world, but more modern. It ain't, however, the case. It's a mess out there, truly a mess. Energy flows from anywhere to everywhere. Everybody can generate energy, store energy. And again, the grid, the physical grid, was not built for this purpose. The DSOs who own the grid, the low voltage grid specifically, they're now basically are in the middle of this and need to provide a stable grid. While there is no measurement in place, they even don't know what's happening and they cannot control it. So this should be the vision DSOs, TSOs had for many years and would basically prepare for that new world, but it didn't happen. Very few senior guys had the balls, had the guts to basically, some years ago, state they need to invest in that future which will come. And now they're basically surprised by what's happening. I'm Dutch, by the way, you might have heard that. But this is a picture of the Netherlands where the DSOs told me years ago, Mark, we are over-dimensioned, no problem in the future. But the reality is, all those colored areas are parts of the country where the DSO cannot accept any feed-in of energy anymore. So solar panels, sorry, wind farms, sorry, or new data centers are powered by diesel generators because they cannot supply more energy. The grid is overloaded. The cables, it's like a water pipe, the cables cannot transport the amount of energy requested either way. So they are basically taken by surprise. They thought they were ready as a sophisticated country, but the takeoff of electrical cars and solar panels such that they basically are not able to manage this. And this is not, there is no quick fix. The ones who are working in a utility, they know. If you want to pull up the street, lay down another cable, man, that's a process of years. Approvals, regulatory things, whatsoever, and the investments, significant. Transformers in this country, 4% are already now planned to be overloaded, and they cannot replace them in such time at all. So the problem, sometimes people think, well, the country has only so many electrical vehicles, should be no problem. But the problem is in that street, in those 10 homes who have solar panels, on that feeder, on that cable, that's where they have a problem. And the problem is as well, you see an old picture, the DSOs have basically a lack of knowledge of what's going on in the low voltage grid. There was never a need. There were a few bulbs at the end of the cable, but nowadays that's different. And they're basically sort of in the dark. They don't know what's going on. And there are so many issues now happening which were not a problem before. The meter department was responsible for collecting billing data, but not power quality data. And they don't know how to use power quality data. I'm moving fast because I want to move to the panel. But in Europe, globally, this trend of EVs and decentralized generation storage becomes a massive trend. Digitization and smart metering in line with the capabilities to manage the grid, but also basically provide lots of opportunities for service providers, retailers, for new services. But the most interesting chart is maybe this chart. Some of you might know it. European Commission, they basically had twice requested every country what is the business case analysis for smart metering. And you see in those graphs with the green blocks that many countries have very different perceptions on cost and benefit. And I show you that even a bit more in detail. Cost per meter point across Europe was stated by every country between 77 and 546. And the benefits between 19 and nearly 1,000. Can this be true? No, of course not. Same meter, same technology. The differences come from the fact that the lack of knowledge, the lack of understanding of the real cost and the benefits. And that made people, companies, countries, make the wrong decision. Lack of skills, lack of knowledge to understand the cost and benefit. Few words on the clean energy package. In my view, a critical and very important step from European Commission to basically prepare a piece of paper, which is, you have not read all those papers, but I highlight the key things in there: customer empowerment, and the DSO has the task to basically ensure it all remains a stable grid. Yeah? And if you look here, you'll see that the consumers have the right to now request dynamic pricing, engaged in demand response, self-production, self-consumption, storage, and sale of electricity. And communities, which I believe will be the major trend, can even own, establish, purchase, and lease a distribution network. And still, the DSO need to ensure that all those initiatives still remain a stable grid for frequency, for voltages, and so on. This is now law to be implemented in every country. But there is no country where this basically really is implemented. I think my last slide. So in that new world, metering, smart grids, you can't look at that in isolation. It's basically becomes a smart city where everything is interconnected. And then, of course, security becomes a vital element. So many endpoints, millions, every solar panel, every inverter, every street light, everything is connected, even washing machines. I bought a new washing machine, Wi-Fi enabled, with the setting that the utility is allowed to switch it on when it fits him, and he can do peak shaving. A lot of communication throughout the day. Load profiles, as used in the past, are invalid. The dynamics of the grid are changing every hour, every half hour. Lots of analytics. You need an extensive IT infrastructure to work the vast amount of data into information on what's going on and see the trends, so that monitoring of the infrastructure becomes an essential ongoing thing. Yeah. Security, last slide, those millions of endpoints, criminal organizations, professional criminal organizations, and more likely, and we'll touch on that with Ruslan as well, countries are attacking other countries and derail the infrastructure. These were my introduction slides, that you know where we're coming from. Well, Peter, you, responsible for the TSO, you see these changes. What is the impact on the TSO of that energy transition and that, well, a bit of rebalancing TSO's role and DSO's role and all those communities?
As you mentioned in the first part of your presentation, what we are living through today is a transition from the energy ecosystem that had been built over more than 100 years, from the 1882, you know, the first demonstration and the first power station on Manhattan by Edison. The ecosystem that was actually built on relationship between the power generation, power consumption, and transmission and distribution in between. And we should actually also acknowledge that it was a process of learning and fine-tuning the details. What we're living through today is a transition to more decentralized system and the ecosystem. And what is changing, and Peter would also comment on that, is not only the physical or the legal relationship between different stakeholders and players, but also the flow of the information, the flow of the electricity, and ultimately the flow of the money, because whoever is consuming is paying for the commodity. But what we are working together with all the stakeholders is also to appreciate the help to the system by the new participants to be compensated, not only to pay for the commodity consumption, but also for the service that will be provided. So for us as the company that is responsible for secure and uninterrupted transmission of electricity within the country, but also across Europe, and also company responsible for balancing the grid, which means to keep the stability of the transmission and the distribution of the through the quality, be it the frequency or the voltage, the reactive power. It's very important and essential for us to step out of our comfort zone that used to be built for decades, and to be more open, to be part of the discussions, to be partnering with all relevant parties and the stakeholders. So that's a big shift, the mind shift in our company.
But if you say talk to all those stakeholders, they need to share the same vision on how the world is changing. Is that the case? Are they all at the same level of understanding on the changes happening and what needs to happen?
I think it's fair to say that everybody understands the world is changing. I'm not in a position to actually put the rating, you know, what group and what stakeholder is ready or how far it is. And I strongly believe that this kind of the conferences and the panels help to deepen the understanding and to really open the discussion around the table. What I might share with you is really the specific proof that we're not only talking and discussing, but really working on the solutions that are getting to the new ecosystem and the new setup of the energy markets design. And it's the joint project between us as SEPs and fellow DSOs, the distribution system operators, in Slovakia and in Hungary. A few years ago, we initiated a project of common interest. The name, the brand is Danube Ingrid. It was a project of SEPs and Western Slovakian DSO, ZSD, and also the Northwest Hungarian DSOs. And the main aim is actually to really build not only the infrastructure, like the new substations and the new overhead lines, but the new way of digitalization of our grids, both the DSO and the transmission system. So part of the project would be really building not only the physical fiber cables, but the solutions powered by the data management, data insights, and the AI to really provide the insight. Because what is very important, and that's where I would stop and provide the space to the other fellow panelists, the data that we would be able to actually obtain through the smart meters, through the applications and the solutions that Peter represents here, are helping us are going to help us in two ways. Number one, really to make sure that that we fulfill our role of keeping the stable and secure transmission and distribution of electricity, but also would provide our grid planning and development team with invaluable insight of where we need to actually invest more, where we can utilize the investment that we already have in the ground over the heads, and where we actually can benefit from the synergy of the ecosystem, rather than push the money and push the investments just to build the increased throughput and the capacity.
Thanks, Peter. Peter, Simco. A benefit of human beings is that if there is a problem, they normally find a solution as well. Mm-hmm. And I showed in that picture of the grid, which it looks like a mess, energy flowing from anywhere and everybody can generate and store. I believe you have found a solution to address the problem.
Absolutely. I would also tie to what Peter just said, that there is like an obvious solution that we just need more capacity, right? But I mean, as you said previously, it takes time, it takes investments, and it definitely cannot solve the issues which happen in the grid on a daily basis, hourly basis, half an hour, minute basis. And but basically, the clear answer to that is that historically and also in present, there is a lot of hidden, I would say, fat or hidden flexibility in the grid, which was not utilized before. Because I mean, the old model that was primarily driven by regulation landscape, I mean, this is critical infrastructure. Naturally, you need regulation to make sure that everybody at homes and in the commercial space are able to switch on and switch off the power, and it's always there. But I mean, as we see the changes which you just presented with regard to electrification, changes of the habits, self-sufficiency, electric cars, I mean, all this requires something which is more intelligent than basically not only increasing the capacity and having heavy regulated environment. And I think that the EU winter package, which you also referred to, was also a major shift, not only in the legislation but also in the mindset here that basically enables solutions like also we are providing. There are also other players there that are basically able to take and utilize the existing flexibility from the grid and provide it to the key stakeholders such as DSOs or TSOs to fulfill multiple parallel benefits, I would say. One of them is always to keep the stability of the grid, right? While the responsible parties still remain, but we want to be there to help, right? The second, naturally, is this is not being done as a charity, naturally, but also those who provide the flexibility, so they have to offer something on their behalf, also want to be compensated for that, naturally, right? So, I mean, from that perspective, as we see the legislation changing, and I have to confirm there have been changes which already are either in implementation or are already valid and active, and some of them are going to be reality during the next year, maybe the year after. The ecosystem is there. Regulatory ecosystem is also there. What is always important for the providers of this flexibility is that there have to be, let's call them like motivational levers or factors. So in that case, suddenly there is a portfolio of values that you as a flexibility provider, flexibility aggregator, if you put it that way, can provide to the system. And once this is there, then basically environment or ecosystem for solutions like ours, for example, which is the artificial intelligence powered platform that manages and in real time predicts and manages the assets which are on the grid edge, let's call them on the grid edge. So they are not typically in front of the meter, but they are behind the meter. So they're at the customer locations, either residential or primarily commercial and industrial. And these stakeholders or new players can provide their services and get the benefits for that. And I think this is a healthy mix, which, if the regulatory landscape is designed properly, there is enough motivation for the providers of this flexibility to participate, that both parties can benefit. So I mean, we would potentially get less of these red or hot area pictures which you just presented also for Netherlands. So I think from that perspective, we're going in the right direction. We just need to, and I think that also, given the unfortunate situation these days in Ukraine, this also will strengthen and put more pressure on the speed of implementation, because we see that what's been obvious and something we could rely on in the past may not be the true anymore going into the future.
Thanks, Peter. Ruslan, we see you're online now as well on the big screen. We're now talking here about sort of sophisticating the grid, but you've got very different problems, pity enough. What is the situation in Ukraine regarding the grid?
Most of Ukrainian power grids were built during Soviet period, and they have low reliability. The average CID level is about 700 minutes in 2021. It's much higher than CID level in all European countries. During the 2022, the situation has become even worse. A lot of grids were damaged by shellings. In some regions, grids were completely destroyed, and we have local blackouts due to that. But the worst thing is that Russia attacks our transmission system operators' substations throughout all the territory of Ukraine by cruise missiles and drones. By doing that, Russia tries to destroy civil infrastructure, tries to make total blackout in all Ukraine. Total blackout during winter is very dangerous to all population of Ukraine. Actually, such actions of Russia are war crimes. In fact, about 50% of Ukrainian power grids are damaged now. It's a big challenge to operate such grid, and we will need to rebuild most of grids after the war.
How long will it take to rebuild the grid to an extent that everybody has energy again?
I think if we will rebuild these grids by our means, by Ukrainian means, it can take a lot of years. But we have a strong support from European countries, from United States, from other countries, and we expect that they will help us to rebuild these grids within maximum year or two.
That sounds like a real challenge, but I hope you can do so and get the funds to do so. Now, I know you had a plan 2 years ago on how to evolve the grid. You need, I guess, to make a complete new plan based on the current situation. Will the plan be very different, what you implement now, also because of technology changes as we speak? What's the impact on the plan while you basically need to start over again and can take advantage of new technology, or you basically give priority by any means to connect people? How does that work?
Yeah, actually, the situation is different in different parts of Ukraine. As for transmission system operators, grids, they are damaged throughout all Ukraine. But as for distribution system operators, half of Ukraine has stable grids and less damaged, with minimum damage. So this year, Ukrainian government has approved the concept of smart grid development in Ukraine. on a period till 2035. According to this concept, all DSOs, TSO, and power plants must implement smart grid technologies starting from next year, including smart metering, distribution system automatization, etc. The main purposes are decrease in SID level and losses level in power grids. But due to war, we obviously will have some changes. Some of pilot project already has been started, but in general, the war made a strong impact to these plans. Most of Ukrainian DSOs and transmission system operator and most of power plants were forced to focus on repaired damaged equipment. While war is continuing, smart grid projects are not the first priority in our country. We have to provide electricity to all customers using existing grids. A lot of cost is needed to repair damaged grids. But smart grid projects will become prioritized after the war. Ukraine will reconstruct most of power grids using smart grid technologies.
Thanks, Ruslan. Talking financials, big money. Normally, and start with you, Peter, the problem with the investment, and you touched on it before as well, is that one party does the investment, like a DSO, but the benefits might be for service providers, might be for retailers, or in the case of a TSO. How do you see the balance between who does the investment and who has the benefits, and how to work that out in a fair way?
It's a really interesting question. And if SEPS was a private company backed up by the shareholders or publicly listed, we would probably look at the question differently than we do as being the state-owned and public service company. So what we understand is our role in the ecosystem here in Slovakia, but also across Europe, and investing into the grid and investing into the means and the tools to regulate the system is part of our role. Of course, the devil is in the detail. What is the limit of the investment, and where we can actually, or how we can justify the investments to be really beneficial for the ecosystem. And one of the ways that helps us is actually look not only from the security of supply and the physical transmission of the electricity, but also to the impact on the other dimension of the energy. We call it trilemma. It's the security of supply, affordability of the electricity or the energy, and then the third part of the trilemma is the sustainability, or helping the energy transition to happen. So what we're trying to do in every single investment project, or the idea, is to look, is it helping the capacity and the security of supply, and how this would actually be affecting the affordability of the price of the electricity, of the affordability of the power. If we can find a balance, then it's one of the answers or the factors to move on. And I give you the example. You read the articles about future investments in the eastern part of Slovakia, either due to decarbonization of the industry, or with the new investor coming, building a plant for producing the EVs, etc. Our role is to really make sure that by 26 and further, the grid is ready to accommodate the technologies that all the projects announced in the eastern part of Slovakia would have a sufficient supply of energy or the electricity. On the other hand, we need to make sure that it doesn't boost the tariffs that everybody pays in the electricity bill, be it the tariff of the distribution, where actually the capex and the investments fall in, or the tariff for the system operations. We call it TSS, or Tarifa za systemové služby. That actually covers our cost of procuring the ancillary services or the flexibility. So coming back to your question, trying to look at the question from a different angle rather than, you know, who's responsible for what and are we going to pay for it or not.
Would you agree that the regulator plays a vital role in fact, ensuring that in a country they're all going to the same proper direction and preparing for the future? Is that something the regulator should enforce and at the same time accept the financial cost as well to prepare for the future? Or is it with the parties themselves? Do you see a strong role for the regulator in this respect?
Okay, the first part of the answer, yes, it should be part of the regulator's job to be done. The second part, we are really seeing a strong commitment of our regulator in Slovakia to build and maintain the framework that is transparent for all the players, but also to be a body who I don't know if the watchdog is the right word, but really looks deeply and in detail of how different participants and the players are playing the game, to have this kind of the warning lights before any problem emerges. What I can say on behalf of SEPS, we're in very close and very intense discussion with the regulator, and that actually keeps us in full attention every day, because what they are supposed to do, and they've been doing that, is really ask very, very critical questions, and sometimes getting us out of our comfort zone, saying, guys, this is your investment plan, or this is your OPEX, this is your headcount. Do you really need to actually reach this kind of the values? Because at the end of the day, this is going to affect the cost of the price that the consumers are paying in their bills. So yes,
Thanks,
the
Peter.
answer is yes.
Peter, for you, similar regulation, let's say, can hinder you. You have a solution which can address some of the peaks and help in asset management. But from talking to you before, yeah, you have to work a bit in isolation. The cooperation with other parties like a DSO is still a bit troublesome. And financially, same trouble. While there could be a significant benefit if it all works together and you can really optimize the use of the network at any given moment. How do you see in your business, regulation, what regulation should change and how should it look to support you?
I definitely agree that the role of regulator is vital. We see it here in Slovakia, we also see it on other markets, that there are active regulators that push the key stakeholders towards more efficient utilization of the system which already exists. This basically has several positive impacts. One of them is maybe a lower amount of investments which are really necessary and are targeted, which, as Peter said previously, they naturally need to translate into the tariffs, which monopolies then collect through the energy bills. This also opens up a way into thinking, how can I better utilize what's already there? So I mean, to cut off the portions of the inefficiency, and this is actually the space where we are going into the smarter solutions, which enables us to utilize in time, every day in a different way, on a very short interval basis, the network in a way that benefits the system, that benefits the users because they get benefits for that, and at the same time, at the end of the day, decreases the amount of, I would say, investments which are not to intelligence because they only increase the capacity. Let's call it the old way. Nevertheless, you still need the hard infrastructure, as Peter said, for new developments to be there, right? Because I mean, the capacity sometimes is just not sufficient, but the allocation of the capex would be then more information driven, would be more efficient, and that basically helps the whole system. From the benefits perspective, which you asked previously, it's definitely the savings on capex and better utilization of the existing infrastructure, and those savings can then be distributed among the stakeholders. So I mean, it benefits, as I said, all the all the ecosystem stakeholders and all the player on the energy market. We also see it from the perspective of current situations. We saw unnatural hikes in the prices of energy, given how the market price is created. This again further pushes on the questions to be asked, like, are there different solutions which can be implemented to either save on the customer side? Can I be more self-sufficient? Can I have a solar or local generation? Can I have different means of flexibility that I can implement? And if yes, typically the customers ask, okay, what do I get for it? What's the return on the investment, right? And I think from that perspective, the situation has changed quite dramatically in maybe last year or two, given the situation on the market, given the regulatory landscape, and given the push by the bigger population towards this solution, because we want to have options to choose from, and this is, I think, very, very good development on the market.
Thank you. I showed you the slides on European Commission regulation with regards to consumers and communities. Now, I said that although it's now law to be implemented, DSOs are not ready, but do you feel that consumers and communities, are they ready? Are they picking up rapidly now? Well, the price of energy has increased. Do you see a change in the last 1-2 years?
Well, from my perspective, as being a private company trying to provide these solutions, I would say that there has been, in the recent past, still a sort of a pushback from the incumbents on the market for fully opening up to the solutions which are technologically available on the market, but at the same time, I understand that they have the responsibility for providing a stable energy supply. So, I mean, there has to be balance there. From the perspective of the demand, definitely there is a huge demand by commercial and industrial customers, which are not in the regulated tariffs. So, I mean, they have been worstly hit by the price hikes. So there the questions very quickly emerged. What can I do to basically go concern and survive through this time period? On the customer, I would say maybe residential, so communities and energy communities, I think there is an increasing ask for, like, what does it mean for me? How can I benefit from it? We see a lot of local individual developments of a solar rooftop up to 10 kilowatt peaks, which is like very simple to implement for local residential, which basically already creates interesting portfolios of local energy generation that can be utilized if they are somehow managed in bigger portfolios. So I see a lot of potential in the energy communities. I would say that the education has not yet happened, so people I don't think they really know, but we've seen a lot of demand coming from municipalities, which are, I think, a good starting point for the communities to start to emerge, because also municipalities have been quite badly hurt by the energy prices, and the questions keep coming.
But do you believe that the business case, the financial benefit, is the main driver at the end of the day for consumers or communities?
I really think so. Also, by the discussions that we are having, it's either, we haven't seen it before, that there has been typically use case for different markets, that there has been a question of resiliency. So, I mean, if the power goes out, what does happen in the upcoming 2 to 3 hours? And this is typically coming out from, or the demand is coming by the commercial industrial customers. And they are really concerned also about the, let's call them micro glitches, like you have very short interruption of the power supply, and then all the technology breaks up, and you need 5, 6, 7 hours to basically get it back together and keep it running, because it's all automated, right? And the second is I would say it's always the first, but sometimes it is the resiliency. But the first is, okay, I invest in this. What do I get for it? What is the return on the investment? And it's really business case driven.
Thank you. Ruslan, question to you. You're now in the state agency in the Ministry of Energy, but you have an expert background in smart grid, smart metering. How do you feel what functionalities should smart meters provide to support this trend, to provide the information needed to see what's going on? You have strong opinions on that?
Yes. All existing smart meters in Ukraine, it's about 5% of total number of meters, are actually obsolete because they can provide only distant reading of consumed amount of electricity, but it can't provide information about power quality and parameters of grid. But for the purpose of effective maintenance and operation of a grid, we need online a lot of parameters. So a lot of these parameters can be provided by modern smart meters. So Ukraine is planning to replace all meters for smart meters within next 10 years. Of course, is correcting our plans due to war. I think it's quite possible. The final plan is to complete this work till 2035. But I think it's possible to do this work within 10 years. But all these smart meters and metering system must be functional with possibility to provide all parameters of grids.
Thank you, Ruslan. With more and more devices, I had a slide in the beginning, security becomes a bigger issue. And I think you have experienced that as well. What can you share about attacks in the grid, and is that a serious issue these days in Ukraine?
Yeah, we have a big experience in this field because the first massive cyber attack on the Ukrainian energy sector was in 2015. And after that, Ukraine grids became much more resilient to cyber attacks. Starting from January of this year, Ukraine lives under continuous cyber attacks, but without serious aftermaths. We have strong support from special state organizations, such as the State Service of Special Communications and Information Protection of Ukraine. Every day there are cyber attacks on transmission system operator, all DSOs, power plants, but not only on energy sector. It's not a matters attacking us. It's special forces of Russian Federation attacking all possible targets in Ukraine. It's a part of war. But actually, our energy sector is quite resilient to this attack.
And that applies to all levels? You said DSO, but are DSOs, are transformers, or where are those attacks taking place? Is it only the IT infrastructure, or where do you see most of the attacks?
They try to attack our power grids, operational system, operational equipment to provide blackout, local blackouts or total blackout. But as for our power plants, especially nuclear power plants, they have completely isolated system and can't be reached by attacks. As for DSOs, they are less protected, but also quite resilient. As for smart metering systems, they are still poor protected, but it can't be damaged very serious because, as I said before, our metering systems are quite simple and obsolete at It's impossible by attacking a metering system to achieve some strong goals.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
something like that.
Peter, what is your take on cyber attacks and risks in Slovenia?
I mean, in Slovakia.
Slovakia.
As I said in the very beginning, and I repeated it a few times, our role is to secure uninterrupted transmission of electricity and to provide the supply of the commodity, which means since we are living in a digital world, cybersecurity should be one of the main factors and the areas where we dedicate our resources and also monitor everyday status. So we take it very serious. I need to touch the wood, and I'm not breaking any law here by saying that we have not experienced a serious attack and a threat in the last 12 months. But never say never, so I'll stop commenting the situation here. What I want to confirm today and here is that really we take it very serious, and not only in SEPS, but you might be aware that our daughter company is a company with the name Octe, which is the nominated electricity market operator. And since their core business is actually pulling the data and providing the data for the billing of the electricity, the cybersecurity is very, very important and essential.
What I see in quite some cases is that the amount of money required for addressing security is too low. The budgets are not basically at the level, well, it's like an insurance. Yeah? It's very hard to demonstrate a business case to spend 1 million more or 5 million more for something which might never happen. So I see that there as well in the financial model, in many cases, yeah, not enough investment is done because, well, they didn't have an attack yet. Is that an issue you see, that you don't get enough money for the level you would like to implement, or is that not an issue?
Simply said, it's not a question of being issue or not. It's definitely we don't categorize put the cybersecurity in this kind of the category of the budget issue area. What is very important is to have really smart people around you in the company, but also our partners, to help you to really answer the question, where enough is enough. Because we may agree that, you know, you can have the limitless budget and you can spend them all on whatever, you know, cybersecurity as an area number one. But it's very important for the company like SEPS, but I think it applies to everybody from the small business to the large enterprise, is to use the money and the resources, the people, in a smart way. And that's what we're trying to do.
What's your take on security with your systems and sort of off-grid environment? Is it an important element? What do you implement?
Definitely, there's it's a critical component of any service provider in this area, given that it's part of the assets on the critical infrastructure. I would say that anybody that operates digitally have seen different types of approaches or attacks on their infrastructure. The key, as Peter said, is to have the solutions designed, and it's important to stress continuously improved to be able to withstand that. So as Ruslan said, some of the systems are fully isolated, but I mean, sorry. But if you are working in, with the assets that are continuously monitored, continuously managed, continuously interconnected within the portfolio of what we call virtual power plants in this case, which are able to deliver that flexibility, then you have to ensure that you are continuously checking yourself that the cybersecurity is okay and you are improving that. Fortunately, there are lots of also ethical hackers on the market which can provide you with this sort of services that can further improve the status you're in. It's important not to forget about it. and yeah, invest in it. The question is how much is enough, but I would say also that there are two ways, or at least two ways that needs to, or that customers also ask, and one of them is the logical security of the communication. So I mean, how you approach the data exchange and how secure is that? What are the means of preventing any breaches and cyber attacks? And what we also see from the customers is the, I would say, or I would frame it as hardware reliability concerns. So we see also from the customers when we go into implementation of, or they invest into the implementation of the new assets that can provide this flexibility, there is a difference. What is the origin of these assets? Where are they produced? If there are any risks, basically over there. So I mean, some of the assets may be, or some of the producers may be deemed more risky compared to the others, and that's also what the customers typically want to choose from. So they want to have some better assurance of the reliability and ability to withstand the potential attacks.
Yeah, to put it more blunt, what you said, there are cases and countries where they see the grid as a critical infrastructure, and for instance, do not allow Chinese products in telcos, but also not in the grid.
Yeah.
Is that a trend discussion taking place here as well?
We've seen it at some of the customers which were part of the critical infrastructure with regard to the connection into the grid. They are not the grid operators, but they want to make sure that the hardware being invested into and implemented and interconnected, exactly as you said, is not coming from China, from certain producers, for example.
There is, of course, the ability for questions from the audience as well. And maybe, are there any online questions? Yeah, we have some online questions as well. Let's take the first one. Peter, what can be the possible instruments to de-risk new investments in flexibility? Could a balancing capacity, CFD, be the way to attract new investments?
It's a really interesting question, and I believe it's obvious to every person or the company that considers to invest in building a new source of electricity that would also provide the flexibility. That's actually part of the larger picture and the capacity mechanisms that both the TSO and the particular ministry responsible for energy could apply in the country. However, if the question is more about, I'm part of the ecosystem with the local renewable energy source and accumulation and the demand which could be provided as part of the flexibility solution, then one of the answers, and that's what I shared actually a few times in the last couple of months on the different conferences, is our roadmap to extend the pool of the players and the participants in the system flexibility in Slovakia. As of today, only certified and the larger ancillary services providers could be part of the game. In the future, and it's part of the legislation that was adopted and the regulation that is to follow, we would like to enlarge the pool through the aggregators in the first instance, and towards the mid-sized consumers, be it owners of the cogeneration units or larger electricity demand sites, but in the future, all the way down to the low voltage market and the consumers with the EVs, heat pumps, etc., etc. So definitely this is the way, not only in Slovakia, but also across Europe. What we also have been working, and we announced that and commented a few times, is integration of Slovak and ancillary or the flexibility market to the European systems with the balancing electricity, which is the Mari and Picasso platforms. But we also have been working on integrating Slovakia to the emerging platforms for the reserved capacity, not only for the balancing electricity system. So I hope that I answered the question.
Thanks, Peter. Peter, for you, specific question. I think I did see it specifically for you. It's gone. You remember what it was? It was in fact the market constraints here for
Yeah,
new service providers.
I think it was something like if we are ready for flexibility and what we see are the differences compared to other markets. If I remember it correctly, I definitely think we are ready for flexibility from the perspective of the end customers or prosumers being able to provide it. It's actually one of the quite critical components of their business case to basically go into these investments. It's not only about the saving side. So I mean, from my perspective, as we perceive the topic, and also as if the customers are considering what's the business case there, we want to execute on all value stack options that are available. So I mean, the beauty of these solutions is that basically that can in real time evaluate what are the best value levers that you can execute with that flexibility, and based on that basically improve the return on the investments. So I definitely think that this is the questions. This is the question you just emerged. So I'll just finish this one. So and then answer that one. So there's definitely a buy-in there from these customers, and it is a critical component of the business case. If these value stacking options were not possible, then I would say that the customers would be much more withholding with their investments, or they would be more recounting whether it makes sense or not for them. In comparison to other markets, if we look only to Czech Republic, or we go more to the West, or we go to the US, every market has its own a little bit different regulation that basically follows what's actually needed on that particular market. And I think it makes a lot of sense, because I mean, all of the countries may have different issues, and they should basically motivate in that direction what is required from the market and from the market participants, so they can basically shift the utilization of that flexibility into the areas and into the value levers that can be executed, and that will help the system. So I mean, on the markets where we see bottlenecks in the individual areas, there's a lot of differentiated pricing. So different prices, different areas on the same market, which we don't see here. Naturally, I mean, we have one price for 1 hour for every particular day, which is applicable to all market participants, independent of whether that is in Michalovce, which is to the far east, or whether it's in Bratislava or Trnava. We can naturally speak about the changing distribution tariffs that would basically reflect what's happening in the grid that is still not implemented, for example, here. So there is one tariff for Western distribution region, one tariff for Middle or Eastern. So this is not really variable, even though historically we had lower and higher tariffs, which were implemented by distribution companies. But the difference, for example, was not sufficient enough for all the market participants to operate based on that.
Thanks. We'll take another one. Yeah, this was your Peter Simco.
Maybe what are the main challenges in adopting smart grid solutions? If I was asked that question maybe a year ago, I would go on and what's basically there. As Peter said, the legislation, from my perspective, is already there. The regulation is following. There is a lot of awareness on the market. So I would say right now, I think we need to maybe streamline the process of interconnection capacity, because there are differences how the interconnection capacity is being let out. So I mean, the participants can basically ask for interconnection because it's not unlimited naturally. And I mean, we have seen batches of interconnection capacity being provided to be available. We've seen on the other markets that the process is more transparent. It's more digitized. There is more communication between the applicant and the DSO in this case. So I mean, this is something that can be improved to make the process more transparent and more believable by the market players, which may sometimes find themselves stranded because they have the money, they have the assets, they just want to interconnect, but they're not given the option to. So, I mean, this is, I think, that's something that is, I think, bottleneck, but we have seen good development also in the legislation there. So also a strong push on local distribution companies to provide that capacity.
I'd like to ask this question on where to invest in transmission, distribution, in generation. So on what level, basically, one should invest and who to decide. I'd like to ask you, Peter, as well as, well, you go first.
Before I answer the question, I would just like to comment one part of what you, Peter, said in the previous answer. And you referred to the bottlenecks and the price regions, or the different pricing in different parts of the country. That's what we actually are able to see either in the US or in Australia. To be very fair, since our power system, not only the transmission but also the distribution, has been built really with the mind of the sufficient capacity and resilience, we don't see this kind of the price differences in our markets. Even, you know, if it was allowed, but, you know, we have this kind of the one universal price for day ahead and the spot price in Slovakia. But it's fair to say actually is that if you zoom out and you look at the Central and Eastern Europe, or the Europe itself, you see these price regions. Regardless the market coupling that the minister referred to in the morning, where we are coupled with Czech Republic, Hungary, and Romania, or we are part of the flow-based mechanism to trade with the electricity transmission or transit across Europe. You see the differences, and you don't need to go actually too far in the history. Just Google the prices of Thursday last week, and you see a difference of 100 plus euros in Germany, but the windmills were actually generating the power on almost full capacity, and you could see 260, 280 in Slovakia, Romania, Hungary. More than double, almost triple. And one of the factors is actually the transmission capacity, and that's where we see it on the regional level, not the local national level. And of course, you know, if this was the case, then we would probably need to look at the problem and the issue on the national one. I use this kind of the beginning of the answer because there's no simple and quick answer. It requires the cooperation and exchange of the ideas and the evaluation of cons and pros of the projects by all key stakeholders, starting with the Ministry of Economy that is responsible for the energy strategy and the execution, all the way through the TSO, regulator, the distributors, but also the key players, the power generators. And again, you know, the question of the new generation capacities was limited to new renewables in the last couple of years. With the war in Ukraine and a push to having the security of supply and security, not only in Slovakia but also across the Europe, the nuclear was adopted as sort of the tolerated or carbon-free accepted energy for the future. And that's another area of the discussions that are to come if they have not already started in Slovakia, but also across the Europe. I saw a question about the new renewables to be connected to the grid, and you know, we're talking about the rooftops on the office buildings, hospitals, and so on. That's again coming from the owner of the building or the business with the large warehouse. I would like to have a control over my bill. It's obvious. And one of the ways today with the spiking prices is to have the capacity of the renewable, which is the solar panels. That's what we, together with the DSOs, are supporting and are doing everything possible that for the rooftops, not the large renewables, we want to create the possibility. We don't have an issue in the eastern part of Slovakia with that. We don't have an issue in the central part. We hit the rock in the beginning of summer here in the western part, but we have been working together with the regulator and the DSO to get it sorted. For now, we sort of helped to smooth the process, but the game is not over. What I would like to stress as a principle, it's in our interest to enable the families, the households, but also the SME market and the institutions to use the rooftops as part of their arbitrage of the pricing.
So Ruslan, may I ask you, your take in Ukraine, the roles of Ministry of Energy, the regulator, the TSO, you have many DSOs which are privatized, not all of them. How is that decision-making process in Ukraine?
Actually, we have a strong regulator.
Our online guest, yeah, still there. Yeah, we see you.
Yeah. We have strong regulator, and actually all DSOs work in similar, not depending on the state of ownership. But some private DSOs even move faster in developing smart grid, in implementing smart grid technologies. For example, some DSOs already implemented project of modernization of dispatcher centers, start to provide modern distribution system automatization, and some small project for smart metering. And the role of ministry and our state inspectorate of energy supervision is to control technical solutions, actually controlling technical part. We provide a technical policy, and in cooperation with the regulator, we are approving investment plans, investment program, and development plans of all DSOs, TSO, and power plants.
Thanks, Ruslan. Can we have the questions back on screen? There was one as well I saw on the what to do with the old grid. Give you my take and then like to get yours. I believe that it's not so much a matter that the old grid needs to be pulled out and thrown away, because if one would have the proper information about the energy flows anywhere in the grid, real insight, you basically can much better decide where you need to invest or where you need to enlarge than just, let's say, enlarge everything. That's first of all, proper insight. But then, while we're gonna move, I'm a strong supporter for decentralized grids. That basically takes part of the pressure as well on the backbones, if there is more done decentralized. So it does not need to be thrown away and pulled out. Would you agree that optimizing based on proper information is the more likely way forward than pulling out and putting new things in? So more bits and bytes than aluminium.
We can agree that any responsible decision should be based on the data. It's a matter of being smart, but also responsible. So here I agree. In terms of the decentralization of the marketplace and the ecosystem, that's the way we're heading to, and there's no dispute from the principle. What is very important, though, to say is, and that's what my mentor, actually, my first mentor, told me in the very beginning of my training, Peter, in the relationship of two people or the group, the most dangerous thing is unfulfilled, untold expectations. And what I feel and we feel in discussion across the table, central model decentralization, renewables, aggregation, accumulation, and so on, there's a lot of details that are not tackled, just let on the high level. And when we talk about the decentralization, from the way of how to include the consumers and the small generators to be part of the flexibility, by all means, that's the intention. And Peter could actually talk about it, not only the solutions for the grid operator or the TSO, but also for the balancing responsible groups, you know, the entities that are responsible for the balancing of the number of the communities, municipalities, and so on. However, what needs to be really shared is that the extreme explanation or the understanding of decentralization, which means we don't need to have the central backbone and a grid, it's not correct. And just, you know, the very quick checksum here. If I'm building a small ecosystem in the town I'm living, and I would like to actually build it as the off the grid, I need more than just the solar panels to feed in the electricity for the households, for the businesses, for the hospital. You need to have some sort of the baseload source of the electricity, because in our conditions in Slovakia, it's just 12% of the theoretical load that could be produced based on the installed capacity of a solar. Like if you have the 1 megawatt installed capacity, you don't get 24 hours times 365 days megawatt hours of the electricity, just 12%. For the rest, you need to have the other source. You can help yourself with the accumulation. I try to summarize here. We share the same understanding, the shared principles, the ambitions. What we're trying to share with all the people around the table, let's not get stuck on the high-level bullet points or the headlines.
I fully agree with you, Peter. I'm not saying that we don't need a TSO. I do believe those...
I didn't take it personally.
I believe in decentralized grids and communities become a strong trend, but you need that backbone to interconnect all those islands of automation. I'm going to go to closing remarks because it's time. Otherwise, I'm not doing a proper job. I think it was an interesting discussion. I hope you found that as well. My closing statement would be, it starts with a vision. All the participants in a given country need to basically sit together and talk about how the world will look 5 or 10 years from now, and agree that any decision, any step forwards need to be supporting that new world together. So start with a vision and then go fast. Thank you.
Mark, can I just use the opportunity, 1 minute, having our friend from Ukraine there, to thank for really open and very intensive cooperation with Ukrenergo and other TSOs in Europe. It's a really challenging time, and we've been in contact with Volodymyr and his team from the 24th of February on a daily basis. So what I would like to say is that we really appreciate the way how you handle this kind of the unfathomed situation. We take the flipping the switch and getting the lights on as Grant said here. It's very different in Ukraine. So we stand with you guys and trying to help in any possible way. That's what I
Thanks, Peter. Proper remark. Ruslan, thank you very much for joining. We'll support you wholeheartedly with your goals on rebuilding Ukraine as soon as possible with the latest technology. Peters, both you thank you for joining the panel, and audience, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.